What if I told you there's a completely free way to delay daycare by weeks or even a month? Save hundreds of dollars and go back to work knowing your newborn is with someone who loves them like you do. I did it, and it was the single best postpartum decision we made. Today I'm telling you exactly how we pulled it off, why I cried like a baby the first time I pumped at my desk, and the tiny tweaks that brought my milk supply roaring back when stress was... Okay, so here is episode 2 of Blowouts and Bombs. This was supposed to be released last Monday. And to be honest, I'm kind of glad it didn't, because I believe this topic deserves the 2-week merge because we have a lot to cover. And I had a very different experience going back to work postpartum than most moms. At least I think so. If this is similar to your experience, please let me know. I think it's genius. I think everybody should do this. And family members, this is a game changer. So if someone in your life who you're close to or local to is pregnant, maybe offer this situation if you're comfortable. See what they say, because I bet anything they would take you up on that. So here is how it went down. I was pregnant, obviously, and had my baby, and daycare wouldn't take him until he was at least 10 weeks old, which was fine. I know most moms take 12 weeks. My situation is a little different because I have not been at my company for over a year, so I had 0 maternity leave. All I had was my PTO, and I did not qualify for FMLA. So the whole time I was off, I was only, I wasn't getting paid. So that was a huge kicker for us. We knew that going into my pregnancy. Knew that going into the new job anyways. So we saved a lot over the summer and kind of had a nest egg, but it was still like, okay, I got to get back to work because we can't live like this forever, right? So 10 weeks rolled around and it was ready to go back to daycare. Before that, I knew I was going to be going back early, and it made me very, very nervous taking him to daycare. Our daycare is amazing, you guys. I now feel comfortable dropping him off, but it's hard to leave your baby at a daycare facility not knowing. With my daughter, I was very lucky, and she was able to go to work with me for the first 2 years. And then I put her in daycare. So with Cooper, this is a very different experience. Taking a newborn to daycare versus a 2-year-old. My husband and I have talked about this a lot. And when they're 2, they're talking, they're able to communicate with you and tell you what happened that day or how things went. And when they're a newborn, you're just kind of like, oh, I hope you had a good day, buddy. And they have an app. They keep updates in there and keep us updated all day long throughout the day. And there's a messaging service in there too that you can, message updates back and forth. So it's not like we don't know what's going on, but still, it's peace of mind when you're hearing it firsthand from your child versus going through an app. And I think there's a lot of moms out there who can agree with that. Because every time I talk about this app, moms are like, oh my God, I love that. So if your daycare has an app, please use it because it's amazing, which you probably have to because you have to check your kids in every morning and it's a whole thing. But anyways, I'm getting so off track here. We knew I was going to be taking Cooper to daycare very young, and I felt very nervous about that. So I know that when babies are little, everybody's so excited to come meet the baby and take time off and be there for mom and dad, which I totally support. Family has done that for us, and we have had several family members come spend weekends with us, come spend days, like a day with us, this, that, and the other. However, it worked out. I loved that time with them. In fact, when my sisters were here, it just so happened that I ended up with a mastitis infection, which put me on my booty, okay? And I had a pretty mild case of it, and I don't wish that on anybody. That was so awful, you guys. But thankfully, and I felt terrible because my sisters were here visiting, and I wanted to spend time with them, but I I ended up in the hospital figuring it out. And then by the time I got home, I wanted to do nothing but climb into bed. So thankfully, my sisters were here and they were able to, one, stay home with the kids while Eric took me to the hospital, and two, they were able to help with both kids the rest of the weekend while I did nothing but laid in bed. So, stuff like that worked out great. However, if you have somebody in your life who is willing to take an extended period of time off of work and wants to help, I highly recommend, if you are going to be putting your baby into daycare, that they schedule that time for the end of your maternity leave. Okay, everybody's going to want to come at the beginning because the baby is super cute and super tiny, and everybody loves that little newborn scrunch. But I strongly urge you to stand up for yourself and say, hey, I think it would be way more beneficial to our family if you come at the end of our maternity leave, if you're willing, if like, because that would be super helpful for us, and honestly, the perfect scenario, because I can delay putting my baby into daycare and like start him later. One, it saves you money because you're not paying the astronomical prices of daycare, which are a whole nother topic that I could talk for days on. But it saves you money, gives you peace of mind because they're not starting daycare at a super young age. And then if you had 2 or 3 or 4 of those family members able to step up and take PTO, vacation time, sick time, whatever they have scheduled, like, one, huge, huge thank you to anybody who's willing to do that. And two, that's a whole month of daycare that you don't have to pay for, and a whole month that your baby gets to spend time with loved ones. And I know loved ones really, really love that alone time with the baby. And mind you, you're going to do this with people you trust. This is not an open invitation for any and every family member to offer this to you. And you can be the judge of that. And sometimes that's a hard boundary to put up. Like, I'm not comfortable leaving my kid alone with you. That can be a really hard conversation. But for those who you are, then by all means, do that. Because when I tell you, the peace of mind I had going back to work my first week, knowing that my child was with his grandma and grandpa and with someone who loved him and cherishes him and cares for him just like I do, was amazing. Hands down, gave me so much peace of mind. So that's my little hack for the postpartum back to work, is if you have a family member who's willing to do that for you, by all means, try to work that out with them, schedule it, get it on the books, because it is a game changer. So yeah, and that doesn't mean they can't visit when the baby's little. We live miles from my in-laws, and so we see each other almost every day, which I love. I'm very blessed to have amazing in-laws, and so I love them dearly. And so they got to see the baby when he was little. But as far as the long-term care, I just think when you and your husband or boyfriend or significant other, however we have babies nowadays, it doesn't matter. When you and that person and your kids and your baby get to stay home together and have that alone time, those first few weeks postpartum and first few weeks of their life, it is crucial. I feel like you guys get to, you know, build a rhythm. And sorry, Cooper is starting to fuss out there and I don't want him to start crying. But it gives you, like, you get to stay in your little newborn bubble with just you and the baby, and it just allows you to get in a rhythm. When you're constantly having house guests, and I don't mean the guests that like pop in at dinner time or pop in on their way home from work, or, you know, the quick little pop-ins like, hey, I just wanted to say hi, drop off a little gift. Those are perfect. I love those, especially when I know they're coming. Like, okay, this is a great time. We're between feeds. You guys can hold him, do all the things. What I don't like is like the long extended times that mess up my pattern. I allow them. I love having family here. I'm a big family person. I love spending time with family. However, it is always a little mentally draining and physically draining having house guests. We all can agree on that. And I am not calling anybody out in saying this. This is like a worldwide phenomenon that what did I just say? You guys know what I'm saying. Everybody agrees that, house guests are like fish. They start smelling after 3 days, or whatever the saying is. But I don't even know what I was saying just now. Basically, if you can plan those extended stays, and they didn't even stay at my house. I dropped Cooper off to them. But if somebody's willing to take time off work, by all means, please, please, please consider scheduling it at the end of your maternity leave, because I promise you, game changer. Okay. So rolling into that first week, I felt really good about dropping Cooper off, and then I got to work, and what did I have to do? I had to pump. And when I tell you the tears that started flowing from my eyeballs, oh my goodness, totally unexpected. I don't know why I wasn't expecting them, because I'm not a very super sappy, emotional person. But your girl's hormones got her messed up right now, okay? So I'm sitting there and I'm pumping. One, I hate pumping, okay? It is a machine that is strapped to you. I don't like it. It doesn't feel natural. I would hands down prefer to feed my baby over be pumped by a robot, okay? Just personal preference. I know there's moms out there who are like, no girl, I exclusively pump bottles all day. More power to you, honey. Okay? I don't like that. So I'm sitting there doing something I cannot physically stand at a job that is crazy hectic right now. I'm trying to catch up from maternity leave. I feel guilty about not working through my pump sessions. So I'm wearing my wearable pump, sitting at my desk, trying to work, stressed out of my mind, thinking about my baby who is not with me, not even in the same building as me, who for the past year, 9 months plus 3 months postpartum, has been super, super, super close to me, right? So to think about that, to have that thought, the fact that I have not been away from this child more than absolutely necessary for a year, got me. Done. Check out. Clock out. I'm going home. I was so over it. Okay. So I cried like a baby so much, and it was embarrassing, and everybody was like, oh, are you okay? And I was like, I just pumped for the first time, and everybody was very supportive. I eventually got over it. I checked in with Eric, and I checked in with my mother-in-law, and I asked for a picture of Cooper, and we did all the things, but it was tough, okay? So be prepared, because you don't have that thought until you have it, and it hits you like a freaking freight train. So after that, and after those next few days of pumping sessions, I realized that my supply was dipping, and it was dipping hard. And I was honestly getting a little nervous, which only pissed me off more, because I was like, here I am, stressed out of my mind, worried about work and what's happening there, trying to get caught up, trying to get back in a rhythm of things at work. And guys, my work life right now is flipped upside down, okay? But, and the one thing that I care about, which is my baby's food, is struggling. Okay. I'm a nervous wreck. Now I'm thinking about that on top of everything else that's happening at work. During pumping sessions, I would make mistakes. I would cry because I'm sitting there doing work instead of feeding my baby. And then I would just be upset, and it would just frustrate me that this was all happening. So I started to think about the differences between work and home. Why do I feel this way at work? Why don't I feel this way at home? And it was because I was working through my sessions. And I know that work is supposed to provide me with a locked room, a clean environment, and necessary breaks as long as my job isn't hindered during that process, which I did. Sorry, I have to move a little bit. But here's the thing. When you're trying to catch up from maternity leave, if you're anything like me, I'm a very above the board employee. I love going above and beyond and learning new things and just being a team player. Like, oh, if something needs done, I'm willing to help out and get it done. So for me to step away from my desk multiple times a day and lock myself in a room, I felt very guilty. Okay, I didn't want to do that. However, when you think about what you're doing when you're feeding your baby, most of the time you are sitting down in a relaxed position with your baby propped up in a blanket, you're just chill, right? When I was at work and I was pumping, that was not the case. So I feel that had a lot to do with my supply because nothing else was really changing. I was staying really up on my water intake because your girl here is a migraine girly, and if I am at all dehydrated, I end up with a migraine. So water intake is a priority for me, regardless of if I'm breastfeeding or not. So I knew that wasn't the case. So I decided to test a theory, and when I went back the following week, I said, I'm going to decrease my pumping session time and increase my pump level, and hopefully that kind of balances out. I don't know the logistics. This is my personal experience. This is what I tried, and it worked for me. So if you're struggling, maybe you can try this too. But I decreased my time, increased my pump strength, and I did lock myself in a room, turn the lights off, and looked at baby pictures in my phone because we all know that my phone camera roll is full of adorable baby pictures right now. And not only just Cooper, I went all the way back to when my daughter was a baby, and it helped, okay? My supply shot right back up to where it was and increased even a little bit. So I think that when you relax, because when you think about it, like I said, when you're at home, you're sitting, you're relaxing, you have a blanket, you're feeding your baby, you got those happy hormones flowing. So I tried to replicate as much of my home life as I could while being at work. And I tried to time it out so that I was only taking 2 of those breaks and not 3 to 4. So how that looks is I pump right before work. And when I say right before work, I literally mean like on my commute into work, I'm pumping. And when I get to my kids' daycare, I pour it in bottles and give it to my son's daycare for him. And I go to work. And then I pump just before lunch, one session, and usually have lunch right after, because anybody who is breastfeeding knows that those breastfeeding hunger and thirst is through the roof. It is crazy. Totally a subject I could talk about. And then after lunch, I work a few more hours, and then right before I leave for the day, like an hour before I leave for the day, I do a pumping session in the afternoon. So then by the time I get home, Cooper's usually ready to eat. And if he's not, I just pump again. So, but this time I'm at home. I'm happier. My baby is right next to me and not across town at some daycare. So it's helpful. I don't know what to tell you guys. But it did help me with not feeling as guilty because this way I was only doing 2 sessions at work. And typically I heat my lunch up and just eat at my desk and work through that. So that's a little bit better. And I know a lot of people are going to say, don't do that. But that is just what your girl does. Um, yeah, those are my tips. So the first week was great when I dropped Cooper off with my in-law. Highly, highly recommend that you talk to your family members and anybody who is planning a trip to stay with you or are local to you and are willing to take time off work, that you try to plan that at the end of your maternity leave, before daycare, so that one, you save money, and two, they get time with the baby and it gives you peace of mind because they're with family and not daycare. And I would even do this, we did this with my husband too, because he went right back to work. I stayed home with the newborn. I took my daughter to daycare, so it was just me and the newborn at home. He went right back to work. And then at the end of my maternity leave, he took an extended time off then. So not just your family members. If you and your husband want to swap off maternity and paternity leave, if your husband gets paternity leave, awesome company that he works for, don't ever leave. And, it just, I think people take for granted those first few months or like the end of your maternity leave because everybody's so excited that the baby's finally here. But I urge you to think about that because I do think it's beneficial to everyone involved and it gives you so much peace of mind instead of a daycare. So just my 2 cents on that. And then as far as pumping, even though you're wearing a wearable pump, cordless pump, however you do it, and if you don't and you're taking your breaks, perfect. But I know there's some girlies out there who are like me and feel guilty about working through that. So, or not working through that. Just think about how you would do it at home and try to mimic your home life as much as you can at work. When I tell you guys, I go to a locked room and I sit on the floor, leaned against a filing cabinet, and just kick my feet out and relax. It reminds me of like sitting at home against the couch on the floor playing with Elena. Like, I don't know, it makes sense to me and it clearly has helped my supply. So that might be something that you want to try. And if you are just a family member listening in on this and someone in your life is pregnant and approaching their due date or already has approached their due date and you haven't made a visit, one, text that person immediately and say, hey, no rush, no obligation at all to respond to this. However, I would like to come visit and say hi. Can we make a plan? Because the unplanned visits are honestly the worst. The planned ones are amazing. So just my 2 cents for all the family members listening. And on top of that, if you are somebody who's willing to take that time off, again, talk to them about their maternity leave, see what the plan is, and offer to help out towards the end of it instead of at the beginning. Because that is where we need the help, and that is where most moms struggle the most. So that's my 2 cents for today, and I thank you guys for being patient with me and sticking it out and waiting for this because one, I think it's a great episode, and two, anybody who knows me knows that I struggle with schedules and I am the worst at keeping track of appointments and to-dos and all of the things. Honestly, if it wasn't for my husband, your girl would be a hot mess. So thank you for that. I hope it was worth the wait. And yeah, if this sparked something in you or you have any other questions or stories or experiences yourself, please, please, please let me know. And I can't wait to share some more next week or the week after that. Who knows, honestly. Thank you guys and enjoy. Bye. What if I told you there's a completely free way to delay daycare by weeks or even a month? Save hundreds of dollars and go back to work knowing your newborn is with someone who loves them like you do. I did it, and it was the single best postpartum decision we made. Today I'm telling you exactly how we pulled it off, why I cried like a baby the first time I pumped at my desk, and the tiny tweaks that brought my milk supply roaring back when stress was tanking it. Welcome to episode 2. Let's talk real postpartum, real fast. So that's my biggest postpartum back-to-work survival guide. Beg, borrow, and schedule your people for the end of maternity leave. Your wallet, your baby, and your anxiety will thank you. And if you're pumping at work right now feeling like a stressed-out milk machine, try stealing 20 minutes, locking the door, dimming the lights, and just breathing while